Silver Pines was the kind of town that seemed forgotten by time, hidden away in the vast, untamed forests of Oregon. On most nights, the silence was comforting, a blanket of tranquility that wrapped itself around the sleepy streets. But not tonight. Tonight, the silence felt alive, charged with something unseen, something waiting. A dense fog rolled through the town, swallowing streetlights and muffling the sound of distant owls. Somewhere in the shadows, an old radio crackled to life, breaking the stillness with a faint, rhythmic signal that pulsed like a heartbeat. Logan, a restless 17-year-old with a knack for unraveling mysteries, sat hunched over his desk in the attic of his creaky Victorian home. His sanctuary was cluttered with circuit boards, tools, and glowing monitors. His own little lab of curiosity. He had been fiddling with an ancient ham radio for hours, trying to revive it. Static filled the air until suddenly the crackle changed. He froze, leaning closer as the sound sharpened into a pattern, a deliberate sequence of numbers. 19.47, 45.12, 23.89, the robotic voice repeated 3 times before the signal went silent. Logan's heart raced. It wasn't a random broadcast. Someone, or something, was reaching out. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he entered the numbers into a mapping program. When the results appeared, his breath hitched. They weren't just numbers, they were coordinates. Coordinates that pointed to a remote spot deep in the woods, a place steeped in chilling legends. Whispers of disappearances, strange lights, and haunting sounds had kept even the bravest locals from venturing there. The woods, known as Shadow Hollow, were said to be cursed, a place where reality twisted and time unraveled. But Logan wasn't one to turn away from a challenge. If anything, the mystery electrified him. Grabbing his flashlight and the portable radio, he sent a cryptic text to his closest friends. "Got something big. Meet me at the trailhead. Bring gear. No questions." Within 20 minutes, Jenna and Ethan arrived, their expressions a mix of curiosity and dread. Jenna, always the skeptic, crossed her arms. "Please tell me this isn't another one of your wild goose chases." "This is different," Logan insisted, his voice steady but his eyes alight with determination. "It's a signal, coordinates. Someone might be out there. Someone who needs us. Or something," Ethan muttered, his gaze drifting uneasily to the shadowy tree line. The trio stepped into the forest, their flashlights cutting through the thick fog. The deeper they ventured, the more the air seemed to hum, as if the woods themselves were alive. Twisted branches loomed like skeletal hands, and the ground beneath their feet felt unsettlingly soft. "I don't like this," Jenna whispered, clutching her flashlight tighter. "Neither do I," Ethan admitted, glancing over his shoulder. "But if we're doing this, let's move fast." Logan didn't respond. His focus was locked on the portable radio in his hand, which had begun to emit faint static, growing louder with each step. Whatever had sent the signal was close. Unbeknownst to them, the shadows seemed to shift and watch, following their every move. The deeper they ventured into the forest, the thicker the air became. It wasn't just the fog or the cold, it was something heavier, pressing down on their chests like an unseen weight. Even the trees seemed unnaturally dense, their twisted branches weaving a canopy so thick that not even the faintest sliver of moonlight could break through. Jenna paused, her breath visible in the chilling air. "Logan, are you absolutely sure about this? What if the signal's just some prank?" Logan turned, his face pale but resolute. "It's not a prank. That signal came from somewhere. Someone might need us. If you want to turn back, I get it. But I have to know what's out here." Ethan let out a nervous laugh, adjusting the camping knife strap to his belt. "If this ends with us on the front page of some creepy tabloid, I'm blaming you." The radio in Logan's hand began to crackle again, louder this time. It was rhythmic, almost like Morse code, but the message was unclear. The static pulsed with an otherworldly quality, almost as if it were alive, guiding them deeper into the woods. Then they saw it, a faint glow in the distance. It was faint, like a flickering candle lost in the darkness. Logan held up his hand, signaling for the others to stop. "Do you see that?" he whispered. Jenna and Ethan nodded, their eyes wide. The glow didn't feel natural, it was too still, too cold. Yet it beckoned them. Step by step, they moved toward it, their flashlights flickering as if the batteries were suddenly draining. As they approached, the glow revealed itself. It wasn't a fire or a lantern but a strange, metallic structure half buried in the ground. It looked ancient, covered in moss and vines, yet its surface pulsed faintly with light. The object was unlike anything they had ever seen, a blend of technology and nature, as if it had grown there over centuries. "What is this?" Ethan breathed, his voice trembling. Logan crouched beside the structure, running his fingers over its smooth, cold surface. It's not man-made. That's for sure. Jenna's flashlight flickered out completely, plunging her into darkness. Guys, this is seriously freaking me out. Can we just go back and call someone? The police? Scientists? Anyone but us? Before Logan could respond, a low, vibrating hum filled the air. The structure began to glow brighter, the light seeping into the forest like liquid gold. The ground beneath them trembled. Suddenly, the coordinates on Logan's map changed, flashing new numbers across the screen. What's happening? Jenna shouted, gripping Logan's arm. It's moving, Logan said, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and awe. It's leading us somewhere else. The hum grew louder, almost deafening, and the light from the structure shot skyward, piercing through the fog in the trees. Then, just as quickly as it started, everything stopped. Silence fell over the forest and the glow faded, leaving the trio in darkness once more. Ethan pulled out his phone, his hands shaking. Tell me you guys saw that. That wasn't normal. That wasn't human. Logan looked at the new coordinates on his screen. They were farther into the woods, deeper into the heart of Shadow Hollow. Despite the terror gnawing at his insides, he couldn't stop now. This isn't over, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Whatever this is, it's not just a signal. It's calling us. Jenna and Ethan exchanged a glance, their fear evident, but neither of them turned back. Together, they stepped further into the unknown, the shadows closing in behind them. The forest seemed to shift as they moved deeper, the terrain growing more erratic and unfamiliar. The trees loomed larger, their trunks gnarled and twisted like the bodies of ancient sentinels. A strange, almost metallic scent hung in the air, mingling with the damp, earthy aroma of the forest floor. The new coordinates led them to a narrow path bordered by jagged rocks, the ground slick with dew and something darker that none of them dared to identify. Logan led the way, his flashlight now dim and sputtering. Jenna followed closely, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as if to shield herself from the eerie chill that seemed to emanate from the ground itself. Ethan trailed behind, his camping knife gripped tightly in one hand, the other clutching a small notebook he used to jot down observations. What if this is some old military site? Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible. A bunker or some kind of experiment gone wrong? Jenna shook her head, her eyes scanning the shadows for movement. Whatever it is, it doesn't feel abandoned. Feels alive. As they rounded a bend, the trees parted to reveal a clearing unlike anything they had seen before. In the center stood a towering obelisk made of the same glowing material as the structure they'd encountered earlier. The obelisk hummed faintly, pulsating with an otherworldly rhythm that seemed to sync with their heartbeats. Surrounding the obelisk were symbols etched into the ground, glowing faintly blue and arranged in intricate geometric patterns. It was as if the forest itself had been carved and molded to accommodate this alien construct. The air was thick with energy, making it hard to breathe, as if the clearing existed in a different atmosphere altogether. What is this place? Jenna asked, her voice trembling. Logan approached the obelisk cautiously, his steps deliberate. I think this is what the signal wanted us to find. But why? Ethan knelt by one of the glowing symbols, running his fingers over the grooves. These markings, they're not random. They look like coordinates, but they're not for Earth. Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The symbols on the obelisk flared brighter, and a deep, resonant sound filled the clearing, like the tolling of a massive bell. Suddenly, beams of light shot out from the obelisk, creating a web of energy that encased the clearing. Jenna screamed as the light intensified, forcing them to shield their eyes. Logan's map device crackled to life, displaying lines of text in a language none of them recognized. A voice, calm yet commanding, spoke through the device, though its words were incomprehensible. The beams of light began to converge, forming a swirling vortex above the obelisk. Shapes appeared within the vortex, faint, shadowy figures that seemed to watch them. One by one, the figures stepped closer, their forms becoming clearer. They were humanoid but elongated, their limbs impossibly thin and their eyes glowing with the same blue light as the symbols. Ethan backed away, his knife trembling in his hand. We need to leave. Now. But Logan stood frozen, his gaze locked with the beings. They're not attacking us. They're waiting. Waiting for what? Jenna demanded, her voice frantic. As if in response, one of the beings stepped forward, extending a hand toward Logan. It spoke, its voice resonating in their minds rather than their ears. Though the words were incomprehensible, their meaning was clear. Follow us. Jenna grabbed Logan's arm, shaking him. Don't you dare. We don't even know what they are. But Logan's curiosity burned brighter than his fear. He took a hesitant step forward, his hand reaching out to touch the beings. The moment their fingers connected, a surge of energy coursed through him and his vision blurred. In an instant, the clearing vanished, replaced by an entirely new landscape, one of towering spires, glowing rivers, and skies filled with swirling colors. Jenna and Ethan were pulled along, the three of them now standing on the threshold of a world they couldn't comprehend. "What is this place?" Ethan whispered, his voice filled with awe. "This," Logan said, his eyes wide with wonder, "is why they called us." The landscape stretched out endlessly before them, a surreal blend of beauty and foreboding. Towering crystalline structures pierced the multicolored sky, their surfaces shimmering like liquid light. Rivers of glowing blue liquid snaked through the terrain, illuminating pathways that seemed to pulse with life. Strange, plant-like formations swayed gently, despite the absence of any breeze, their translucent leaves glowing faintly. Logan, Jenna, and Ethan stood in stunned silence, their breaths shallow. The beings that had guided them stood at a distance, their glowing eyes fixed on the group, as if waiting for them to adjust. "I don't think we're on Earth anymore," Ethan muttered, his voice trembling. "No kidding," Jenna replied, her tone a mix of awe and fear. She pointed to the sky, where shapes floated, massive, leviathan-like creatures with glowing patterns etched into their skin. They moved gracefully, their presence both mesmerizing and intimidating. Logan took a step forward, his hand brushing against the ground. It felt warm and alive, as if the world itself was breathing. "This place, it's not just a world. It's a system, a living organism. Everything here is connected." The beings moved suddenly, gliding toward the group with an elegance that defied logic. The largest among them gestured for the trio to follow, its glowing fingers tracing a path toward a towering crystalline archway in the distance. The arch pulsed with the same rhythm as the obelisk back in the forest. "Do we trust them?" Jenna asked, her eyes darting between the beings and the archway. "Do we have a choice?" Ethan countered. "It's either follow them or figure out how to survive here alone." Reluctantly they followed. The path was lined with strange, bioluminescent flora that emitted soft musical tones when touched. Jenna couldn't resist brushing her fingers against one, and the sound it produced resonated deep within her, evoking a fleeting sense of nostalgia and peace. "It's like it knows me," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. As they approached the archway, the air grew thicker, charged with energy. Symbols carved into the crystalline structure began to glow brighter, their patterns shifting and rearranging as if responding to the group's presence. The leading being turned to face them, its glowing eyes narrowing. It spoke again, its voice echoing in their minds. This time, the words carried a faint familiarity, as though the language was adapting to them. "You are the first to answer the call," it said. "Your world stands on the brink. We offer knowledge and power, but the choice to wield it must be yours." Logan stepped forward, his curiosity burning brighter than ever. "What brink? What are you talking about?" The being extended its hand, palm upward, and a swirling orb of light appeared above it. Within the orb, images played out like a vision, a catastrophic event unfolding on Earth. Massive storms tore through cities, the seas rose, and strange, shadowy figures emerged from the depths, wreaking havoc. Jenna gasped, her hands covering her mouth. "Is this the future?" Ethan shook his head. "No. It's a warning." The being nodded. "A convergence is coming. Your choices here will determine the fate of your world. Will you unite with us or face it alone?" Logan turned to Jenna and Ethan, his mind racing. "We need to make a decision. Do we trust them or do we find our own way?" Before they could answer, the ground beneath the archway shifted, and a portal began to form, a swirling vortex of light and shadow that seemed to beckon them forward. "What's on the other side?" Jenna asked, her voice barely audible. The being's response was simple yet heavy with meaning. "The truth?" They stood at the threshold, the weight of their decision pressing down on them. Beyond the portal lay answers, but also the unknown. Behind them was the alien world they barely understood. Logan clenched his fists, his determination unwavering. "We've come this far. We need to see this through." With a deep breath, he stepped into the portal, disappearing into the light. Jenna and Ethan exchanged a look, fear and resolve mirrored in their eyes before following him. What awaited them on the other side was beyond anything they could have imagined. Emerging from the portal felt like passing through liquid light. Logan, Jenna, and Ethan stumbled forward, landing on a smooth, obsidian-like surface that hummed faintly beneath their feet. They looked around, their breaths catching in their throats. They were inside an enormous chamber, its domed ceiling stretching endlessly into the void. Ribbons of glowing symbols floated in midair, weaving intricate patterns. In the center of the room stood a colossal structure, a cube-like monolith, its surface alive with pulsating energy. "This place," Jenna whispered. "It's ancient." The beings appeared behind them, their forms less ethereal now, more defined. The leader stepped forward, gesturing toward the monolith. "This is the heart of memory," it said, its voice resonating with an almost musical quality. "It holds the chronicles of our kind, and the truth about yours." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Our kind? What do you mean?" The being extended its hand again, and the monolith responded, projecting an array of holographic images into the air. The group watched in stunned silence as scenes unfolded: Earth in its primeval state, beings descending from the skies, and an alliance formed between the extraterrestrials and early humans. "You were not always alone," the being continued. "We came to guide, to teach. But your kind strayed and the bond was severed. Now the convergence threatens to undo everything." Logan stepped closer to the images, his mind racing. "What's the convergence? Why us?" The being turned its glowing eyes toward him. "A cycle of destruction and renewal. It comes every 10,000 years, and only those who stand at the nexus can influence its outcome. You were chosen because your world teeters on the edge, chaos or rebirth. The choice rests with you." Jenna shivered. "We're just 3 people. How can we possibly stop this?" The monolith shifted, revealing compartments filled with strange artifacts, armbands, crystal-like devices, and what looked like weaponry forged from light itself. "These tools are the remnants of our last alliance," the being said. "They carry the power to unite or to destroy. Your bond will determine their strength." Ethan hesitated, staring at the artifacts. "And if we fail?" The being's expression darkened. "Then your world will join the countless others that have fallen to the void." Logan reached for one of the armbands. As his fingers brushed its surface, the device came to life, wrapping around his wrist and emitting a soft hum. Images flooded his mind, visions of battles fought, civilizations saved and lost, and the immense responsibility now resting on their shoulders. "We don't have a choice," he said, turning to Jenna and Ethan. "If we don't try, Earth is doomed." Jenna and Ethan exchanged a look before stepping forward, each selecting an artifact. The room seemed to react, the symbols swirling faster, the monolith's energy intensifying. The leader stepped back, its form beginning to fade. "Your journey is far from over. The portal will take you to the Nexus. There your final test awaits." Before they could ask more, the portal reopened, its swirling light more chaotic than before. The chamber trembled as if urging them forward. "Whatever happens," Jenna said, gripping her artifact tightly, "we stick together." Ethan nodded. "No turning back." Logan took a deep breath, leading the way into the portal once more. As they stepped through, the monolith symbols flashed one final time, a cryptic message burned into the air. Strength in unity, weakness in division. The trio vanished, their fate intertwined with the destiny of the entire planet. The portal thrust Logan, Jenna, and Ethan into a storm of chaos. They landed in a barren, desolate landscape where the air felt heavy with tension. The sky above was fractured, split into a swirling mix of light and darkness, and the ground beneath them shimmered as though alive. "This place," Ethan whispered, scanning the horizon. Towering structures rose in the distance, their jagged silhouettes stark against the chaotic sky. The Nexus was unlike anything they had imagined, a battleground where the remnants of time and space collided. A deep rumble echoed across the expanse, and figures emerged from the shadows. These weren't the ethereal beings they had encountered before. These were dark, twisted forms. Their glowing red eyes and jagged armor exuded malice. "The Convergence's forces," Logan muttered, his grip tightening on the artifact. The armbands they wore glowed brighter, syncing with the weapons in their hands. Jenna's device morphed into a bow of pure energy, Ethan's became a shield that pulsed with protective light, and Logan's transformed into a dual-bladed staff. A voice echoed in their minds, the leader of the beings they had met earlier. "You must defend the Nexus. The forces of chaos will stop at nothing to claim it." The ground trembled again and the creatures charged. Logan moved instinctively, his staff spinning in arcs of light that tore through the first wave of enemies. Jenna took a steady stance, her bow releasing arrows that shattered the darkness, while Ethan planted himself firmly, his shield deflecting attacks and sending shockwaves through their ranks. Despite their newfound strength, the enemy forces seemed endless. For every creature they defeated, more appeared, emerging from rifts that tore through the fabric of the Nexus. "We can't hold them forever," Jenna shouted, releasing another volley of arrows. Logan's mind raced as he fought. The monolith's message echoed in his head: strength in unity, weakness in division. Together. Logan called out. We have to use the artifacts together. The three of them regrouped, standing back to back as the creatures encircled them. They raised their weapons in unison, and a surge of energy rippled through the air. The armbands synchronized, their light growing so intense that it forced the creatures to halt. A massive rift opened ahead, and from it emerged a figure unlike the others. It was enormous, its body composed of swirling shadows and glowing veins of energy. Its presence radiated a chilling power, and the other creatures fell back as it advanced. This must be the Convergence's champion, Ethan said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. The champion raised an arm, and the Nexus itself seemed to respond. Massive shards of the ground broke away, hovering in the air before launching toward them. Jenna rolled to the side, firing arrows to intercept the projectiles, while Ethan's shield absorbed the brunt of the assault. Logan leaped forward, his staff slicing through the air, but the champion was fast, countering with an attack that sent him sprawling. We need more power, Jenna shouted. Logan's mind flashed to the monolith and its warning. He closed his eyes, focusing on the artifact. A memory surfaced. Images of the beings channeling their energy into a single, unified force. Focus your energy into the Nexus, Logan yelled. It's the only way. Jenna and Ethan hesitated but followed his lead, channeling their power toward the center of the Nexus. The ground trembled as the artifacts linked their energy, creating a beam of blinding light that shot upward. The champion roared, its form beginning to waver under the intensity of the light. It lunged forward in a desperate attempt to stop them, but the combined force of the artifacts repelled it. We're almost there, Ethan shouted, pouring everything he had into the connection. The light grew until it engulfed the entire Nexus, erasing the darkness. The champion let out a final, piercing scream before dissolving into nothingness. As the light faded, the Nexus stabilized. The fractured sky began to heal, and the ground solidified beneath their feet. The trio collapsed, exhausted but victorious. The voice of the ethereal leader returned, soft and filled with gratitude. You have done what few could. The Convergence is halted and your world is safe, for now. Jenna looked at the others, a weary smile breaking across her face. We actually did it? Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. Barely. Logan sat up, gazing at the now peaceful Nexus. We might have stopped this battle, but there's still so much we don't know. Wasp. And what happens next? The leader's voice faded, leaving them with one final message: the answers will come in time. But for now you have earned your rest. The trio watched as the Nexus began to fade, returning them to the forest clearing where their journey had begun. Though exhausted, they felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had faced the unimaginable and prevailed, but they knew their adventure was far from over. The trio stood in the quiet clearing, the flickering remnants of the Nexus fading from their view. The forest around them was peaceful, the tension that had once gripped them now replaced with an eerie calm. Yet the silence felt heavier than ever before. They had won, but there were too many unanswered questions, too many mysteries left unresolved. Logan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. I don't know about you guys, he said quietly, but I feel like we've just stepped out of one nightmare, and into another. Jenna nodded, her eyes scanning the trees. This forest doesn't feel the same anymore. Like something has changed. I keep expecting it to shift into something we don't understand. Ethan, still holding his shield, gazed up at the sky. It was a stark contrast to the chaotic skies of the Nexus, but it was too calm. Almost unnatural. The power we tapped into, it didn't just save us, did it? It did something else. Logan's eyes narrowed. The leader's message, the answers will come in time. It's like we're still part of something much bigger. But what? Suddenly, a sharp, almost imperceptible sound cut through the air. A subtle hum like a distant whisper carried on the wind. It was familiar, like the feeling of the monolith calling to them. Logan's heart skipped a beat. He turned to the others. That's it. The artifact, it's still active. Before any of them could react, the ground beneath them shuddered, sending a jolt through the forest floor. The trees around them groaned, their branches creaking as if waking from a long slumber. And then, right before their eyes, a glowing rift began to tear open in the air. This time it wasn't just a small fracture. This was larger, more intense. The rift pulsed with an ominous, otherworldly energy, and from it emerged figures, massive, towering, and cloaked in darkness. They were the same beings that had attempted to stop them in the Nexus, but now they were different, their forms shifting and mutating with an unnatural fluidity. "We're not finished yet," Logan said, his voice filled with urgency. Jenna reached for her bow, but Logan held out a hand. "No," he said. "It's different this time. We've learned something, we need to trust what we've gained." Ethan looked at him in confusion. "What do you mean?" "They're coming for us." "I know," Logan said, staring at the rift with determination. "But we've got something now that we didn't before. The artifacts, the energy. It's not just a weapon. It's a key." Before they could process what Logan meant, a voice broke through the chaos. It wasn't from the beings, nor was it from the leader they had encountered. It was something else entirely, an ancient, commanding voice that filled the air around them. "The time has come." A figure stepped out from the center of the rift, unlike any they had encountered. This one was humanoid, but its presence was terrifying. It wore an intricate armor of shifting, metallic patterns, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. A strange crown hovered above its head, pulsing with energy. "I am the Keeper," the figure announced, its voice echoing with power. "You have unlocked what should have remained hidden. Now you must face the consequences." Logan's heart raced, but he stood firm. "We didn't choose this. We were chosen. And we've done what we had to." The Keeper's eyes narrowed, scanning each of them. "Your world will never be the same again. But you have one final choice, to continue on this path or to turn back. What you have done will either save or destroy your world. But the consequences of your actions are beyond your comprehension." Ethan stepped forward, gripping his shield tightly. "We've already faced the darkness. We've already seen what's out there. What choice do we have now?" The Keeper raised a hand and a massive, swirling vortex opened beneath them. The ground began to crack apart as the rift widened, threatening to swallow everything. The trees trembled, their roots pulling out of the ground as the sky darkened above them. "You will choose," the Keeper intoned. "And in doing so, you will either save your world or doom it to the very darkness you have fought to resist." Logan looked at Jenna and Ethan, their eyes filled with fear and determination. They had faced the unimaginable before, but this time they weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting for everything. The decision lay in their hands, and the fate of their world depended on the choices they would make in this final moment. And as the world around them crumbled, they knew this was only the beginning of something far greater. The journey was far from over. The battle would rage on, and they would either rise to face it or be consumed by it. The Keeper's words echoed one last time in their minds. "Choose wisely, for the end begins now."